Good evening, everyone. Back in the 1960s, a wealthy businessman by the name of Paul Ricard wanted to handle the challenge of building a premier racetrack near Marseille. The man who was the brainchild behind all of this, Paul himself, wanted to challenge himself in a way that he hadn't done before, and was able to find some solace from fellow entrepreneurs who explained to him that it was going to be not too much of a challenge to create a circuit. What transpired here at Le Castellet was the creation and development of one of the most pioneering race circuits in the entirety of motorsport. When it was first unveiled back in 1969 and then fully opened in 1970, it was the safest track in the world, and it's a status it still proudly holds to this day. But tonight the drivers will be able to experience all of the battles out around this fabulous circuit here at Circuit Paul Ricard for round 8 of the Season 11 GT3 Series Championship with ACC Race Nation. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator, as always, for the GT3 Championship. We've been following Mark Chapman setting what is currently provisionally the fastest lap on circuit at 1:54.087. We are just 5 minutes into the session, another 15 minutes remaining. A great circuit though that we're racing around tonight. It's one that will promote a lot of opportunities for overtaking, and it will also give the drivers a chance to push their machines to the limit in an environment that will allow them to do so and really go for the jugular when they're trying to make overtakes. There are a few corners on this circuit that I will highlight to you as we go on board with a lap with another driver later on, but we'll just run through the field who are racing this evening. So as I said, Mark Chapman leading the way at the moment. Then you've got the 208 Mustang of Hartle Toby in second place, Jordan Harding in third at the moment, Davy Zoutenbayer in fourth, Jeffrey Van Buren in fifth position. Then you've got Howard Dunn in sixth place, Michael van der Waal in seventh, Dennis Penders in eighth position, Mark Gray in ninth, and then the last two drivers to set a lap time so far in the session, Jacob Byford-Roux in that M4 GT3 and his stablemate of Joe Warner. Lots of other drivers in for this evening. There are 22 of them. The rest of them are as follows. Dan Hatton, who is out on circuit, Skoda Stripes. You've got John Wells in the pits currently, Ross Harris in the 244 Porsche. Then you've got Rich Jarram, you've got Liam Watkinson, Tony Manley, Stuart Packham in the big Bentley. Watch out for him tonight. That'll be a quick car inevitably. Tony Sokolov, our championship leader at the moment, the number 100, who's added a few more splices to his livery, is how I would describe that. Dayglow yellow with a bit of chrome reflected on the back of it. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He's on some incredible form right now. And the other two drivers, Nick Lamming in the 87 McLaren, has a bit of a wiggle out of the final corner there, and Phoenix Night Train, who that is quite literally his name. So that is where we're at the minute. But we've got a couple of drivers who've just set a few lap times, Sokolov being one of those, a 1:54.6 for the Ferrari driver. So looking to try and take another race victory so far this season. And to just give you a bit of a understanding of Sokolov's championship so far this season, he has won 4 out of the 7 races that we have contested so far. The other results that he's had, he had a second place finish at round 1, he retired from round 3 and he missed round 5. So his hit rate of finishing races is impeccable when it comes to getting on the podium and more likely than not on the top step. So we might ride on board with him in just a short while. But before we do that, I do want to go through the championship standings. So, as I mentioned, Tony Sokolov leading the way on 184 points. But the man who isn't giving up so far this season, Danny Zoutenbayer, the reigning champion from season 10, he is in second on 178 points, just 6 back. Mark Chapman on pole at the moment, he's third on 175. In fourth place, you've got Stuart Packham in the Bentley that is yet to leave the pits. Davy Zoutenbayer, that's Danny Zoutenbayer's brother, he's running in 5th place in that Nissan. He's been having some really good running in the first half of the championship so far. Can you believe we're at the first halfway mark of the championship? We're only at round 8, still 7 more to go after this event. But Davy Zoutenbayer, he's on 167 points. Jeffrey Van Buren is 6th, not just on track, but also in the championship as well. He's on 164 points. Jordan Harding is 7th on 153. Jordan does typically go quite well around Paul Ricard, so not a bad effort from him on the second row of the grid currently. Mark Gray in the Mustang is 8th at the moment in the drivers' standings. Don't forget, got that podium at round 3, but he's on 150 points currently, as is Dan Hatton. That is Skoda Stripes, the number 55 McLaren there. And rounding out the top 10, Dennis Penders on 146 points in the Ferrari 296 GT3. So, a lot of action ahead of us this evening. I'm just looking at the drivers who are going around. It looks like Hartle Toby will be the next driver to set a lap time. So let's see if we can find the Mustang and get on board with him. There he is in that Mustang. So we'll go for a lap on board of this wonderful circuit here in Le Castellet. So the Mustang fires out of the corner and heads towards turn 1. Don't forget, 17 corners on this racetrack. So he plows towards turn 155 miles an hour roughly as he hits the brakes just at the 100 metre marker, down into second gear, over the curb on the left hand side at turn 1. Turn 2, little bit hesitant on the power, uses all of the road and more, and he pulls over because he's invalidated lap time. So that is a grand old shame. If we can get to Dennis Penders, he looks like he's going onto a flying lap. Of course, there we go. So into turn 1, then turn 2. Penders has got to make sure he doesn't run too wide and he keeps it within the white lines. Rolls his way down towards turns 3, 4 and 5. A little bit blind, the braking zone for this one, until you get to here, of course. Just before the 50 metre marker, clips the inside curb there. In second gear, down to first for turn 4. And then you really have to get the line accurate here through 5 so that you open up the steering for turn 6. A long, long, long right-hander that feels like it goes on forever. But then you can fire it out at turn 7. We're, of course, not using the chicane layout for this circuit. So you can skip out what would typically be turns 8, 9, 10 and 11. Instead, we will have turn 8 at Signs, which is at the end of this straight. The Ferrari flexing its speed muscles up to 175 miles an hour. Can you go any higher? The incline does start to get up, but the 296 gets to 177. Little twitch through the right-hander, infamous corner here at Paul Ricard. And then it's this long sweeping right-hander here at what is turn 9. Goes on for quite a long time, but line variation is going to be a big part of the race later on. You'll see the different lines the drivers are taking. Down into the left-hander, first gear, nicely done over the exit curb there. Been a tidy lap so far from Penders. He's got 2 more corners to navigate, including this left-hander here. Another long sweeping turn. He does that quite nicely, but it's all about the line-up for this final corner here. Don't take too much curb, otherwise it unsettles the car like it did just there, and that'll cost Penders about a tenth or 2. It was looking like a slight improvement on the previous lap, but alas, he goes over the line and does a 55.5, so 2.5 tenths slower than what he had already managed. So that was a lap on board at Paul Ricard. Let's try and get some external cameras and we'll return back to this screen. So Chapper's still leading the way from Hartle Toby. Tony Sokolov in 4th place. Davy Zoutenbayer, the only Nismo driver in the entire field, but he's having a great run so far inside the top 5. Would be the best qualifying position that we've seen from him so far in season 11, and from what I've viewed and broadcasted. But Davy's been having a solid run in the championship so far. I'd like to see what his straight line speed is like actually compared to the other drivers. And hello to everybody who is watching in the chat at the moment. It's really good to see you watching this live event here with ACC Race Nation. It's going to be a lot of intrigue coming towards us over the next hour. I'm sure you're all as fascinated as I am to see how the drivers get on. Just make sure we get an accurate depiction of the drivers on laps. I apologise for any noise in the background. There's a few things that have been scattered a little all over the shop. So 17 corners typically at Paul Ricard. Obviously tonight we're missing the chicane, so it's actually 13 as Van der Waal moves out of the way. 6 minutes and 11 seconds remaining in qualifying as Dennis Penders rounds turn 9, as we were on board with him earlier on. He's inside the top 10 at the moment. He's just been shuffled down. Michael Van der Waal in 9th position at the moment. Zoutenbayer just coming towards the line in the split liveried Ferrari. Just looking to see if he does improve on that lap time. He hasn't done as of yet. The track map is a little bit confusing when it comes to the start-finish straight. Even though it is there, the guideline for where the drivers cross to set their laps is actually set back slightly further in. So that could be a bit confusing from the layout, but we'll do our absolute utmost to stay on top of it all. And as we go the chase cam with Dan Hatton, he's just going through the second sector, well, the third sector officially on the track. But for Dan, he's aiming for some more good results. You know, he finished 5th last week for round 7. He's been scoring those top 5, top 6 results over the last few rounds, and another good result for him at Barcelona. Can he improve on that? Let's not forget, we saw him finish in 4th place at Zolder not so long ago. He's more than capable of getting himself into the mix for a podium fight. That's why he's in the top 10 in the drivers' standings. Still got a number of drivers yet to set lap times, and I have a feeling there's some qualifying implementation bans going on there, which makes me suspect that for Joe Warner, for John Wells, for Rich Jarram, not for Joe Warner rather, and Stuart Packham, I believe those 3 are going to have some issues. Joe Warner's done a decent lap time though. We can't see him on the track at the moment, but he's only 4 tenths off Leard Watkinson as Jacob Byford-Rue does the emergency escape out of the way for Tony Sokolov, who then moves out of the way as well. So everyone's getting a little bit confused in these final few minutes as Jeffrey Van Buren tries to pick his way past the 2 confused drivers there. That was nicely timed. We can cut to the Dutchman. Jeffrey aiming to get some more race victories this season. He's of course already had one back at race 1. Has had a bit of misfortune, but last 2 rounds have started to swing his way. You know, he did finish 4th last week in the event at round 7 for Barcelona, so it is starting to change towards the Dutchman's favour. In terms of the success ballast as well, just to make you aware, ladies and gentlemen, how we are running it here at ACC Race Nation. The top 3 drivers run success ballast, as Jacob Byford-Rue went very wide at signs there in the background. So the 3 drivers who are running the success ballast will be Tony Sokolov, the number 100 Ferrari, and then it'll be Danny Zoutenbayer, who finished 2nd. He'll be running a little bit less ballast than Sokolov in the 101 Ferrari. And then the driver who finished 3rd place last week is Hartle Toby in the Mustang. So, as we've discussed before, Hartle Toby doesn't seem to get affected by ballast. I don't know whether it's the unique nature of the Mustang being the big beast that it tends to be, and it does carry weight quite well, because it is a fascinating car compared to the other ones that it competes with. It is a little bit naturally heavier than the other ones, so maybe the Ford engineers have found a trick where the displacement of the weight ballast can actually have a minimal impact. He's 2nd at the moment, only 2 tenths behind Mark Chapman, which is a great effort really from him. He's looking to get a race victory again this season. He had that one back at round 5 where he was able to break the field at Laguna Seca, but since then he hasn't had a race win. He's not had any, terrible drives or performances. He's had a bit of bad luck, but he goes up to second place with that effort and goes a little bit faster. So is there a little bit more time in the back pocket of the Mustang? We will wait and see. Zoutenbayer up to third place. So the ballast around Paul Ricard isn't affecting the drivers in the same way as it would at other race circuits that we've been at so far through the season. As we watch Tony Sokolov going down the long straight here at Le Castellet. We're actually going to see what the drivers are doing in terms of straight line speed. I know that at the minute it looks like Phoenix Night Train is going down the straight, so I want to see what his top speed is working out at. There we go, 170 miles an hour so far in the Porsche. Remember, Dennis Penders earlier was doing 176, and the Porsche is about the same on that corner, so that's where we are. What about Hatton in the 55 McLaren? There he is. He's building up the speed now. Still maintain that Hatton's got one of the most striking liveries on the grid. Can his straight line speed match the flow of the paint? So 174, 175. It's a little bit slower in the McLaren, only by a mile an hour, but that could make a difference when it comes to overtaking down the main straight. In fact, if we can get a onboard camera, what we can do as we move into the last 20 seconds of the session, we can see what Chapper's straight line speed is at the minute. It's in kilometers an hour in the AMR V8, so we're going up to 280 kilometers an hour, maybe 281 perhaps. Looks like that's it. That's qualifying over though, so this is the lap for Chappers. If he wants to try and get a better lap time, that is close. That was exceptionally close to hitting the barrier there. Chappers is doing 173 miles an hour in an Aston Martin, but Hatton goes into 14th place. That's where he will remain. The other cars that are out there are still circulating. Chappers will be the next driver to come along. Most of the drivers are in the pits though, so most of the drivers are done for their lap. So we'll go through the order in a moment's time. But can Chappers extend that advantage in the AMR V8? He comes around the final corner, clearly hasn't invalidated his lap time from that later excursion, and then goes into the pits and decides to tease us with that one at the end. Jeffrey Van Buren sideways through the left-hander, the penultimate corner at turn 12, and he's going to be offline for turn 13, and I have a feeling he's going to go into the pits as well. Yes, he does indeed. Jacob Byford-Rue, he's another driver. Well, he's got out of the way of Tony Sokolov, so that won't be an improvement for him. So championship leader in 5th place at the minute. This is an important lap time to try and get onto the second row of the grid at least. Is he able to do that in the Ferrari? Yes, he does. He moves up into 3rd position. That's a cracking effort from the Season 11 Championship leader. And now our attentions turn over to Hartle Toby in the Mustang. Can the 208 find 0.2 of a second? Sokolov found most of that. But he's given up on the lap. And that is qualifying over and done with then. Excuse me. Mark Chapman is your pole sitter then for this evening at Paul Ricard. Hartle Toby within 0.2 of him. Then it's Tony Sokolov and Jeffrey Van Buren on the second row. Jordan Harding on the third row of the grid alongside our Season 10 champion Danny Zoutenbayer. Just alongside on the next row back, Davy Zoutenbayer, his brother, is in 7th place. A little bit of a gap back to Michael van der Waal in 8th place. And then in 9th position, you have got Mark Gray and Ross Harris round out the top 10. Good effort from Ross Harris, actually, to get inside the top 10. Phoenix Night Train is 11th, with Dennis Penders in 12th place. Then in 13th position you have Howard Dunn, and in 14th place on the 7th row of the grid is Dan Hatton. On the 8th row it's Nick Lamming with Jacob Byford-Rue. Row 9 sees Tony Manley going alongside Liam Watkinson, and then Joe Warner, the last of the drivers to set a valid lap time. Those that couldn't set a lap, John Wells. You also had Tony Manley and Stuart Packham. Those 3 drivers not able to set a lap time due to various penalties imposed from the previous race. So I'm just going to give myself just a quick breather, and then we will get into this 1 hour race in front of us. So just hold on to your horses, make yourselves a cup of tea. We'll be back in just a moment's time. So less than 50 seconds to go before the session gets started here at Paul Ricard. The drivers going through their last minute checks before the 30-second timing board will appear. They'll get a signal to start their engines and get them fired up for a formation lap. And there you go, the drivers now doing that. We can get out on track. The drivers, I can go on board with them all lined up quite nicely on the grid at the minute. There is our pole sitter in the form of Mark Chapman, and can he convert today? You know, that is a big question really for Chappers. I've talked many times about how he's more than capable of taking a championship, and we've seen throughout the seasons that he's competed with ACC Race Nation, he's got the ability to do so. But for various reasons, whether he's not able to race at all the rounds or something or other, he's just not had the opportunity to mount a proper championship challenge. But right now, he is in the thick of it in 3rd place. He does have some very strong competition behind him who will want to try and get a race victory tonight here at Paul Ricard. We've mentioned Hartle Toby. We know Tony Sokolov is the championship leader. Jeffrey Van Buren, who won the first round of the season earlier, way back in the calendar at Silverstone on the 17th of September. It feels like such a lifetime ago now. But we haven't really discussed the man who has qualified in 5th position. You can't really see his nameplate, but you'll see him come through the shot now in the McLaren. That's Jordan Harding. You know, I can't recall when Jordan Harding last had a race victory with ACC Race Nation. If he has done, it's certainly not been in the time that I've commentated on it. And he's done races around here before, and he seems very comfortable in that McLaren 720S Evo. So watch out for the McLaren. He could be a dark horse in this race. You know, Danny's out and buyer. He hasn't won a race this season either. He is carrying a little bit of bias on the car. I say bias. Ballast bias is how I would describe it. Where that will be placed in his car, he will only know, and his team. But Danny Zoutenbayer will be another one to keep an eye out on. Let's have a little bit of a look further back. Ross Harris will be happy with a top 10 start. Doesn't have Phoenix Night Train behind him, so the two Porsches will be exchanging some data there. Davy Zoutenbayer yet to have a podium. Is this one of those days where we have a bit of carnage around us and the Nissan takes advantage? He has had a 4th place this season. A couple of races ago before the season break. Can he take control? Can he get into it with the front runners? Michael van der Waal, Mark Gray, Ross Harris, those are the top 10 runners. The rest of them, don't rule those 3 out either. We've seen Mark Gray put in some really good performances through the season. Let's not forget that 3rd place back at round 3 at Imola. He's more than capable of pulling something out of the bag. It's just, can he get a good run of form? Can he turn it around? This is a track for the Mustang tonight, you feel. And what about the man in 4th in the driver's standard, Stuart Packham, all the way at the back of the grid in the big Bentley? But if there's ever a circuit where the Bentley is well suited for racing around here and climbing through the field, you feel that this is the chance for the 108 driver to put himself in the mix. He had that amazing racer a couple of weeks ago where he finished in 8th place after a wonderful recovery drive. Can he do anything better than that? Can he improve upon that position? But the drivers are just starting now to line themselves up side by side. They need to get themselves into their designated positions. We're going to cut to Mark Chapman, who's going to lead them round the last 2 corners. Everyone else will be filtering their way through. That takes us on a very steady approach, driving almost at the speed limit for most areas in the UK, but obviously he's gone beyond that now. So Hartle-Toby will move alongside him. He'll get himself into position with the Mustang, and it'll all be about the reaction time. This is what will be critical here for round 8 of season 11 here for the GT3 series with ACC Race Nation. And the race is live here at Le Castellet and Paul Ricard. And it's a good start for Hartle-Toby. He's going to be alongside Chapman into turn 1. He's got his nose in front as well. And he's going to brake a little bit later in the Mustang. He moves into the lead. So a great start for the man from Germany. He's got the lead at the moment. What about further back? We look at Ross Harris and Dennis Penders side by side. At the minute, you've got Jordan Harding fighting with what looks to be Danny Zoutenbayer in front of us. We can get to those external cameras. That's Michael van der Waal running a little bit wide. There's contact. That's Phoenix Night Train round. We saw another car facing the wrong way, and that looks like we've got Rich Jarram and the Aston Martin of Howard Dunn involved. So a nightmare for those two, and that's Davy Zoutenbayer being nerfed by his brother off the road as they go through turn 7. I'm sure there'll be some debating about that later on at home over the family dinner, I'm sure. But at the minute, it's Van der Waal looking to put some pressure on Danny Zoutenbayer. He's had a great start in the 71 McLaren. He's going to be on the outside line. He's going to have a bit of slipstream moving through the field. As we approach signs for the first time, Rich Jarram's gone backwards. There's a yellow flag out there, so something's gone wrong for him. But as we look through, oh, Van der Waal sliding. He's still sliding. He's going to go back on the road, and there's contact between himself and Ross Harris. He's now in the middle of the road. Watkinson avoids him. Joe Warner gets clipped. He's going to slide round. I think Joe Warner might have just about got away with that. He is facing the right way. He got a little bit of a touch. But that was such a great shame. That was all Michael van der Waal running wide, going onto the marbles and sliding back onto the track. And it was a miracle, really, that no one else was involved. But Mark Chapman's gone backwards whilst we've been watching that. So Sokolov has got past him. You'll see the timing tower just move up a little bit as that shuffles itself around. Let's try and get a better camera angle here so that we can look at Hartle-Toby leads, Sokolov second, Chapman third, Van Buren in fourth, and Jordan Harding in fifth place. Danny Zoutenbayer is tracking with them at the moment. He had that little battle with Van der Waal, don't forget. So Zoutenbayer was probably put off a little bit. You could see Harding putting Van Buren under pressure, trying to force him onto an alternate line as they go into the right-hander at turn 5. But it all comes down to whether Jordan can get close enough to the back of the Ferrari to slipstream up to the back of the 187 in front of him and then try and get past him before Sainz. It's not really a heavy braking zone, but he is quite close in the McLaren. He's gaining in terms of speed and distance, and this looks like an opportunity for the McLaren. He's going to move to the inside line, just moves out of the slipstream now, as is Sokolov, who's defending from Chappers as they approach Sainz. This is going to be brave stuff between these two. The top speeds are plateauing. They both give each other a lot of racing room, to be fair, a lot of respect shown. They come back together for the next right-hander at turn number 9. He's going to squeeze through his Harding, and he's got the place. So that was really nicely worked. Harding moves up to 4th. Great overtake that. And Davies Zoutenbayer, the two brothers going for it. Zoutenbayer of that is Davies up the inside. And the Nissan really putting his car about the place. Doesn't care if his brothers are reigning champion. He wants to go for it, and he's open in a couple of minutes. And the Nissan's down the inside. Slides a little bit at the penultimate corner. Davey on the outside for the final corner. Can he cut underneath his brother? Not quite. Danny placing his car quite well, but good traction from the Nissan off the corner. And he's going to be in front of him, I feel, before we get to turn 1. That Nissan seemingly having a good bit more straight line speed of the Ferrari gets relegated into 7th place. So nice overtake. Dennis Pender's looking interested in this fight too. And then there's a gap back to Jacob Byford-Roode running inside the top 10. Someone take a picture. What a time to be alive. He's absolutely flying. He's had a glorious start in the M4. We'll ride on board with a couple of drivers where we can. I like that camera angle, so that's hopefully the one we can go with. Let's go with that one. That's going to be a bit more easy for everyone to have a look at. But Chappers trying to fight back after that poor start in the opening 5 minutes. There's Harding. He's got a bit of work to do now to try and catch up to the front 3 if he wants to get on the podium. He's going to have to turn his attentions back in a little bit to Jeffrey Van Buren down this straight. Sokolov defending heavily. It's giving Hart and Toby a bit of a breather at the front. Oh, Sokolov slides mid-corner, and that's the chance for Chappers. Down the inside of Sainz. Now he's going to be on the inside at turn 9, and I think the Aston Martin is going to be free. You could see the green and yellow in front of us, and that is a lovely move from the pole sitter. He's recovered 1 place back. Now he's going to try and go after the Mustang up the road. Despite Ross Harris getting involved in that contact earlier on with Michael van der Waal, he's managed to escape relatively unscathed by the seams of it, although Tony Manley's thrown the AMR V8 down the inside. I wonder if Harris is carrying... yes, he is certainly carrying damage. I wonder whether the Porsche is going to decide it's time to peel off into the pits. The pit lane obviously not over there, and he's now having to defend from Liam Watkinson, who's covered some good ground. And look at Stuart Packham. He's right there, up to 13th from 22nd on the grid. So the Bentley is making the moves that you would expect it to do. There's Michael van der Waal coming out of the pit, so a nightmare start for him. And I think Hatton has also had a bit of a mare as well. So sadly for Hatton, he's been caught in that incident. And Watkinson trying to find his way through. The number 4. There's Packham all over the McLaren. He's going to look to the inside, and then he thinks better of it. Watkinson runs a little bit deep. You got Phoenix Night Train keeping a watching brief. Hatton is the car between those two in terms of Packham and Phoenix Night Train, but he's a lap down at the present moment. Just trying to keep an eye on these fights all throughout the field. There's a lot to try and keep on top of. As Dennis Penders is now trying to attack Danny Zoutenbayer. And he's going to be on the outside line as Zoutenbayer. A little bit of a flick of the oversteer from the back of the car. The traction just not complying. And Zoutenbayer moves down into 8th place. And he's drifting almost through turn 9. And that's not going to help his tyre wear through the race. I wonder if the rear brake bias has just set a couple of clicks too far backward. He's sliding again into turn 10. So The Dutch edition of No One Sleep in Tokyo is available for you here in France. What a lovely international way of describing that. Sokolov still putting the pressure on Chapman. He hasn't been able to pull away from the championship leader, has Chappers, but they are closing that gap marginally down to Hartel Toby. So the Ford not pulling away just yet. Jeffrey Van Buren running in 5th place. He's being shadowed by Zoutenbayer in 6th in the Nissan. And Stuart Packham has worked his way up to 11th, so he's halved his grid position from 22nd to 11th, and into the pits comes Ross Harris. So sadly, that damage is just a bit too much for him to try and continue on with, which is a shame because it was a really strong qualifying from the Porsche. And he's going to have to get that fixed. Whether he remains on the lead lap, we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of not on the lead lap, Hatton, the number 55, just... I said before in qualifying, can he get a good run of form together? And sadly, lap 1 ruined all of that for him. Liam Watkinson putting in a good drive so far, I have to say. He's doing a good, solid drive in the number 4 McLaren. Next up for Stuart Packham, though, is Tony Manley, who's had another great start, who's just stayed out of trouble. As the Italian, as Tony Manley. There's Nick Lamming in 14th place, so he's stayed out of trouble as well. I know that in a couple of races he was getting involved in a few incidents. Joe Warner's still in 15th and on the lead lap. I wonder if he got any damage, Joe, in the BMW. That's something we'll have to find out later on. Chapman, though, look at that gap for Hartel Toby. I think Hartel Toby just had a little bit of oversteer then. Out of turn 9 that put him on the wrong line. Let's get on to the external cameras here and look at Chapman, who is right there. We don't like this big nameplate in front of us. We want to see it from the driver's perspective. We'll ride on board with Tony Sokolov. He's got a prime time position viewing for watching all of this. As Ross Harris picks up a stop and go penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Well, that's just going to compound his day, really. That is a shame. But Mark Chapman's worked hard. He's got himself back within striking distance of the race leader. And don't forget, Toby has been the race leader since turn 1, lap 1. As the game has a little bit of a glitch moment there, we can ignore that. But is the Aston Martin V8, is it quick enough? Oh, he's hit the back of Toby, there's contact! And that's turned the Mustang round, and it's going to completely reshape the race because Chappers is going to have to slow right down for him and let him back through. But Hartel Toby gets turned around, and that drops him out of the lead of the race. Incredibly, he's not as far behind as we thought, so he's managed to recover the car. But that's put Tony Sokolov into the lead of the race for the time being. But Jordan Harden now into 2nd place. So thankfully for Hartel Toby, he's only lost, he's lost the race lead in 2 positions, but he's now fighting with the cars next to him. He's got Jeffrey Van Buren on the inside of him, and I think the Ferrari is going to get that position. He is indeed. And Davies Zoutenbayer's there. What was I saying before as Chappers runs wide in the background? What was I saying about Davies Zoutenbayer, ladies and gentlemen? He might be in a position to strike at some point if he just avoids the trouble, and that's what he does. Picked up a bit of a reputation for just picking off drivers when he can, and look at him trying to go around the outside of what was the long-time race leader. Hartel Toby will be a bit frustrated. He was setting a nice pace. In fact, goes through. Lets the Nissan go past. Oh, and Hartel Toby going across the... As he... Oh my God, he's contact. I was so confused for a moment, and it's put all sorts of drivers into chaos. Tony Sokolov's in the wall, Jordan Harding's in the wall. It was almost as if the wheel disconnected, and we've just saw absolute drama. I've never seen that before in a league race, but my goodness, what has happened there? Hartel Toby has caused drama at the front, and it's completely reshaped within 4.5 miles of Hartel Toby leading this race. Now we've got Jeffrey Van Buren at the front, Davies Zoutenbayer trying to take the lead, but he's going to go too deep at turn 3. Mark Chapman's now going to try and sneak his way up the inside, and he does do, but Davies Zoutenbayer on for a potential podium. Dennis Penders is up there as well. Drivers that you don't typically see at the front, fighting for race victories, are now fully pronged and involved in this. Wow, I've never seen that before. I'm just looking to see. Hartletoby's in the pit, so we really have to find out what happened there, but it's caused absolute chaos. Mark Chapman, after a lap and a half ago, was down in 6th place running off the road, and he's fighting for the race lead again. Jeffrey Van Buren's got the lead. Davy Zoutenbayer's there in 3rd. Then it's Dennis Penders. Then it's Danny Zoutenbayer. Jordan Harding, that's significant damage to the front of that car. And the same for Tony Sokolov. They will be furious at what's just transpired. We'll have to find out what's gone on with those guys. In fact, Tony Sokolov has been massively impacted. He had a huge hit on the right hand side. Jordan Harding's got the hazard lights flashing, so he's definitely going to be coming into the pits, I think, to try and get that fixed. But it's, again, this is reshape the race. The absolute carnage that we've seen. Look at Davy Zoutenbayer. He's all over the rear wing of the Aston Martin. Chappers is going to have to go defensive into turn 1. Can Zoutenbayer look to the outside line? He's going to try it. We're side by side into turn 1 on board with the pole sitter, and he's just about going to stay ahead of the Dutchman. Take a breath, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a turn up for the books. No one was expecting that. Jordan Harding sadly in the pits. That's going to kind of ruin any chances of a race victory tonight. But what it does do is bring a few new contenders into play. And look at this! Jacob Byford-Rue, take a bow. He's in 6th position. He's got Stuart Packham, who is a case of inevitability here that Stuart Packham will go past Jacob Byford-Rue. But what a drive this is. You have to give him credit, because Jacob Byford-Rue is not normally this high up, but he has just driven a solid opening quarter to this race. What a drive so far from him. Let's hope he can maintain. I mean, a top 10 position would be astonishing for him. It would be really, really encouraging. I think Stuart Packham almost ran into the back of him then. That was the overspeed that the Bentley had compared to the M4, and thankfully no more contact was made, but woof, that was a moment you wouldn't want to see again. But Packham all over the rear spoiler of the M4. In fact, Byford-Rue running very, very deep at 9, and the Bentley up 16 places. This is a turn up from Stuart Packham. He is absolutely flying, and now he's got 10 seconds to make up on the front quintet. If they're going to keep fighting, do not rule him out here. Packham's got a chance. It just all comes down to how he manages his tyres and his speed over the coming laps. I think Tony Manley is going to try and sneak through. This is another couple of drivers given the opportunity to shine tonight inside the top 10, Manley being one of those. Can he find a way past the BMW? He's on the inside as we approach turn 1. I know the group at the front is still very, very close together. A little bit of door rubbing between the two, but the Aston Martin gets in front and up into what is 7th place. But Byford-Rue, fair credit to him, is really trying to fight back with this position. He's going to be on the inside going into turn 3. They're still side by side as they approach it. I think Manley's going to just about have enough overspeed here to maintain that 7th place, and he does indeed. So Tony Manley, the Italian, up into 7th place. Phoenix Night Train, after being caught up in some earlier issues, he's now in the fight for all of this. Hartletoby is a lap down after the damage that he's had, so he's going to carry on. Nick Lamming inside the top 10. Liam Watkinson inside the top 10 almost. I mean, that would be another phenomenal result. The only result that would be more incredible than that is if Joe Warner found himself inside the top 10, which would be really, really encouraging. Just looking to see, Jordan Harding has come out in 15th position. He's not a lap down, crucially. The group behind him, though, aren't far away, and that's the group containing Jeffrey Van Buren, the race leader, Mark Chapman. So the front two, Davy Zoutenbayer, he said he was 1.7 seconds behind, but that gap has clearly come down. Dennis Penders and Danny Zoutenbayer. Looking at these 5 right now, prime position for a potential race victory. And the only driver this season who has got a race victory under their belts is the man in the lead. which is Van Buren. Chappers has won races before, of course, in ACC Race Nation, as has Danny Zoutenbayer, the reigning champion. Dennis Penders is looking at a podium opportunity, which he's not had before. Same with Davey. But they're also in the mix for a race victory. This is a position that they've not found themselves in typically. Can they do anything with it? Can they outwit the veterans and get a shock victory? Wouldn't that be a story? Wouldn't that be an amazing story to have? We'll try and cut forward to those drivers. And Chapman side by side with Van Buren. He's trying to go down the inside. And an unorthodox overtaking place. But he hasn't quite managed to get himself in front of the Ferrari. But he will have put him slightly offline. And this is the chance for Chappers now. He can't get into the slipstream because he's too close to the Ferrari, who's heavily defending the inside line. And he's just sort of drawing alongside the rear left quarter. Where's Davey Zoutenbayer? I'm just watching. There he is in the background. He's not far away. So he's getting a double tow from these two drivers. Oh, Van Buren's wide, and Chapman, can he find a way past? He's going to be on the inside at turn 9, and he makes the move stick. Van Buren's going to try and go underneath, but I don't think he's quite close enough. But Chappers runs too deep. A little bit of contact. Over the curb goes Chapman, and Davey Zoutenbayer is going to try and sneak through into second place. He's going to have to go the long way round at turn 10. He's going to get the traction off the corner. He'll have the inside of 11, which should give him second place for turn 12. It does indeed. Wow. This has got to be one of the most exhilarating races we've had in ACC Race Nation this season. This is frenetic to the nth degree. We've got a proper fight on our hands for a race win. And I'm just going to mention it. Those drivers were doing 1:57s on that lap. I just wanted to see. Yeah, Stuart Packham's closing this gap down. He's not far away. I mean, that would be incredible if Stuart Packham were to come from 22nd to win. But you can see the Bentley just in the back of shot there. Absolutely thundering his way down the straights. So this time, we ride on board with Chapman once again, but he's in third position on this lap. Third of the race completed so far. It's been breathless. We're going to try and get on board with Van Buren, who's getting closed in by the Nissan. Look at that little camera on the middle of your screen there. Zoutenbayer is going to move to the left-hand side, and will he take the lead of the race here at Paul Ricard? He's got a nose in front, he's got a car in front, and he's got the lead of the race. He's going to try and defend on the inside line is Jeffrey Van Buren, and he might just sneak back through. Zoutenbayer giving a lot of racing room, and that might just let Van Buren squeeze back through. He's lost it. The Dutchman's lost it. He's spun round, and he loses the race lead emphatically there. He was trying so hard to just defend the inside line, but the car and the camber just didn't want to agree at that speed, and he drops to 5th. He's still in the battle. He's still only 1.2 seconds behind, but he's just going to have to compose himself, get himself back into a racing rhythm, and try and attack again. Dennis Penders is in 3rd position. Wow. Absolutely brilliant for him. Dennis Penders looking for a podium. I know he finished 2nd in season number 10, but he didn't have a podium. He was just incredibly consistent. But this is a glorious opportunity for him. Can the Belgian do something to establish himself in this front pack and maybe whisper it? Try and challenge for a race victory. Can Davey Zoutenbayer do the same thing? He's got the lead of the race right now, but Stuart Packham's not far away. He really isn't far away at all. We've now got Davey Zoutenbayer we're on board with. Let's just have a look at the closing speed from the AMR V8 behind us. So Mark Chapman has been up and down this top 5-6 leaderboard like a pogo stick, but he's closing that gap down this long long Mistral straight. But he's not quite close enough, and I have to say that Nissan does have a clean pair of heels. Its straight line speed is very impressive. And he's going to stay in front. Now, Zoutenbayer has led races before, thanks to alternate pit stops. This is really the first time that he's had to withstand the pressure from someone who knows how to win races in ACC Race Nation. And Chappers goes down the inside. There's contact door to door. But Zoutenbayer is just going to hang on to the lead. But every little fight that they have will bring Penders and Zoutenbayer and Van Buren back into play. Zoutenbayer runs very deep into the penultimate corner, but I tell you what, that is some great car control to block Chapman's exit out of the final corner, and the status quo remains, but it brings the top four closer together. 0.6 of a second Penders was compared to Davy Zoutenbayer on that lap. I thought Chapman was going to go for a late ditch overtake. That was not the case. Just having a little quick scan through from the drivers to see where everybody is, but Chapman is the one trying to make an overtake here. I can already say with some confidence this has been the best race of the season so far. It's been astounding to watch. Nice line that from Chappers, but will it compromise him? Oh, he said that he's done it again. He's done it again. He's running to the back of someone. And Chapper's alternative line spins Davy Zoutenbayer around. And lo and behold, after all of that, and I can't believe what I'm saying here, but this is a turn up for the books. This could be the result of a lifetime. Dennis Penders leads here at Paul Ricard. Danny Zoutenbayer is in second place. Jeffrey Van Buren is in third. I think Chappers might slow down in a little bit to, oh, Zoutenbayer, how wide do you want to be through signs? Don't want to be hitting those little flapper marks, because that could cause a huge balance upset if one of those gets stuck underneath the car. But Dennis Penders leads the race. He's never won in ACC Race Nation. I'm not going to say anything else. I don't want to curse anybody. This is an astonishing race so far. I did say Chappers would let Zoutenbayer back through, and that's exactly what he's done. And Chapman goes into the pits then, 34 minutes and 35 seconds to go. He's looking to try get a new fresh set of tyres on potentially, or just get some fresh air and try and pump the lap times in to get himself away from this group. I've cut to Stuart Packham because I did mention him before. He's an outside contender for the victory. If we have a look at the gap between himself and the race leader, it's not much. It is not much. It's about 8 seconds. In fact, he can see the race leader going around that right-hander just over there at turn 5. So Stuart Packham is putting in a shift. Tony Manley, as a result of Chapman's pit stop, moves up to 6th place. What a drive from the Italian this is. Byford Rube is in 7th. Of course, it hasn't yet cycled through that Chapman's pitted, so that's why it looks like they're in the wrong position. Phoenix Night Train in 8th place. There you go, it has now updated. John Wells is running inside the top 10, as is, I believe, Liam Watkinson. So inside the top 10 for the first time. That's really, really encouraging for Liam in that McLaren, the number 4. Oh, as I say that, he has a little kick of oversteer. In fact, he has a bit more than just oversteer. And Nick Lamming will be paying close attention to this. Oh no! Mark Chapman's picked up a stop and go time penalty. And that is going to put a huge spanner in the works for his race. My goodness, we're 27 minutes into this race and nobody wants to win it. It's absolutely shocking. But Nick Lamming wants 10th place. I think Nick Lamming would want a race victory, as would Liam Watkinson at this rate. But the two of them very closely matched down the straights in those McLarens. He's going to try and dive in a little bit later, it signs. It's brave from the 87. We're on board with the pair of them. We can't quite see. Oh, and Liam Watkinson goes off into the marbles. Keep it in a straight line, which he does. managed to recover it, but that is a nice overtake for Nick Lamming. Back at the front, the gap has closed up between the top three. Dennis Penders is 7 tenths clear of Danny Zoutenbayer and 8 tenths clear he is of Jeffrey Van Buren. Davy Zoutenbayer isn't far away, so despite that tag where he got spun round, he's not out of this yet. He might have a little bit of red mist thanks to what happened, but he's certainly not out of contention, and he's actually closed the gap down a little bit on this first sector. But Norris Stewart Packham, and we now have a 5-car fight once again for the race lead. Take out Mark Chapman, that stop and go penalty is going to rule him out of contention for a win. But you cannot call this. You really cannot call this. The top 5 drivers in this race today, only one of them has won a race this season. Only one, and that was Jeffrey Van Buren back at Silverstone, round 1. 3 of the top 5 have never won a race in ACC Race Nation. It's just 2 of them, I should say, not 3, and that's Penders and Zoutenbayer, and they're in the hunt right now. You know, Davy Zoutenbayer, that Nissan looks very strong, I have to say, and he is closing that gap down. That gap looks like it's come down by a second on this lap alone. So Davy pulling himself back into contention. Everyone else, they're all fighting over loads of different positions all over the race circuit. In fact, they're a little bit more spread out, to be honest. So the action really is at the front. And Danny's out and by a pits. Reigning champion is in the pits, as is Mark Chapman, to serve that stop-go penalty. So a nightmare for him. He's still not going to be in a terrible position, is Chappers. I think he'll probably come out of this okay once other people have to stop. Jacob Byford-Rue in the pits, pitting out of what is a brilliant 7th position. So that's giving a little bit of a, I was going to say a little bit of a gap to Dennis Penders, but it hasn't, because Jeffrey Van Buren now is the one applying the pressure in the 187. Oh, that's a little bit wide. From the 103, we are halfway through this race. Davy Zoutenbayer is clawing the gap back. Packham was, but I think he's had a little wobble somewhere. Tony Manley running inside the top 5. This is the day of days for the underdogs. It's so brilliant to see. It really does give a lot of encouragement to anybody who is watching ACC Race Nation right now. There are drivers running in the top 10 who aren't normally up here, but it's the development that they've had from competing in this league. They've improved, they've consistently shown up to races, and they've got quicker and quicker and quicker to take advantage of situations like this. And speaking of trying to take advantage of a situation, Jeffrey Van Buren is trying to do just that. But he's got to find a way through Dennis Penders, and I've watched Dennis on a number of occasions through the last few seasons. The Belgian isn't the easiest to overtake. He is someone who races quite fairly, but this is a unique position for him to be in. And you can see, there he goes into the pit. So he's deciding he wants to get onto potentially a new fresh set of boots, which he's going to do. So Van Buren moves into the lead. Zoutenbayer was 4 tenths quicker than him on that lap though, so he's going to have pressure here. Liam Watkinson has just come out of the pit. He's going to move nicely out of the way. Good driving that from Liam. But Davy Zoutenbayer trying to close that gap down. Packham also playing himself into contention. Where does Penders come out in relation to this guy here? Danny Zoutenbayer had 2nd place last week, did the Dutchman. And he's trying to make another 1 spot improvement on that. Looking at the guys who got caught up in incidents before, Jordan Harden, he's in 12th. Hartle Toby, who ineffectively caused that collision, he's in 15th. Chappers is down in 17th thanks to that drive-through stop and go that he had before. And it looks like to me that sadly we've lost Tony Sokolov from this race, so that is a big shame. Now where is he? There is Zoutenbayer. in 8th position. Where's Dennis Penders? He's a couple of seconds behind. So there is Zoutenbayer just in front of us. So that earlier pit stop has brought a little bit of time advantage to Zoutenbayer. We'll get a timing update when they go through the middle of turns 5 and 6 just to see what the gap is. Zoutenbayer 21 seconds currently off the pace. Penders is 4 seconds back. That's still achievable. 27 minutes to go in this race. Now, will Van Buren respond? No, he doesn't. Nor does Davy Zoutenbayer. Packham can see everybody else, and he's decided it's time to pit. So Danny Zoutenbayer could be racing himself into the net lead here. But we've just got to wait and see how this all shakes out. Zoutenbayer has got the Porsche of Ross Harris in front of him, who will get out the way. But it will be a little bit of a distraction for him that he'll have to try and navigate. Just looking a little bit further back, Byford Rue is only a second behind Phoenix Night Train. Don't forget, Byford Rue's pitted now. So this is a fight for position. Jordan Harding on the fringes of the top 10. He did pit after 15 minutes, so it's not impossible for Jordan to try and go to the end of the race without pitting again. See if he can pull that off. And Mark Chapman has just managed to work his way past Howard Dunn at the next corner there at turn 5 and 6. So Chapper's moving through the field. Packham's coming out of the pits. Where is Zoutenbayer? He's going through. So Zoutenbayer moves through. Dennis Penders. This is going to be close between the Bentley and the Ferrari, but the Bentley can't find enough time to leapfrog the 103 Ferrari. So Packham will be close, and that's going to bring him into contention for a spot on the podium. I can't believe I'm saying that from 22nd on the grid. But it is all up in the air at the minute. Really, you can't call this. Davy Zoutenbayer is still keeping Jeffrey Van Buren honest. We're just waiting to see if either of these two go into the pits. No, they carry on again. So they're going for a longer run. And as we watch as Zoutenbayer goes into turn 1, I'm just having a little look through the comments at the moment, and Hartle Toby did confirm his wheel disconnected. I did say it looked a little bit bizarre, and I can't imagine Hartle Toby is the type of driver to try and make an impact with anybody. But it did disconnect, so sadly for Sokolov, he has retired as Penders has a wobble through that left-hander there. Managed to gather it all up together, but you can tell he's trying to push. He knows he's wanting to close that gap back up to Zoutenbayer. That gap has extended a little bit, out to 5 seconds between the two. And maybe the race victory just slipping away from Penders, but podium fight is still on. Let's just have a look at the times from these last few laps. So we can see that Jeffrey Van Buren did a 55.8 on the last lap. So 55.8 from Davy Zoutenbayer. 55.5 from Danny Zoutenbayer on that lap. And Dennis Penders did a 56.5. So, just looking at his sector times, that wobble that he had cost him near 3/4 of a second. So, that's going to cost him, but he's just got to keep his head down. You know, he's got Packham with him, don't get me wrong. Packham is still an outside shot for a podium place here. Davy Zoutenbayer, though, has decided it's time to pit. Drive-through penalty going the way of... Oh, Jacob Byford Rue, no! Oh, I can't believe it. He'd been putting in a flawless drive up until that point. Just looking to see where he is. can he? I think that's going to drop him outside of the top 10. I mean, it was looking so good. It was looking so good for Byford, but that drive through, sadly, is going to drop him outside of the top 10. Zoutenbayer is watching his other brother in the pit lane at the moment. The two Zouts are trying to fight it out. Van Buren's carried on. We're going into the last 22 minutes of this race. Packham has got within a second of Penders, and you feel that if you get on the Mistral straight, he is going to blitz his way past the Ferrari with a bit of slipstream. Zoutenbayer's leaving the pits now, but his brother goes through. Where is Penders in relation to the Nissan? It's going to be close. But Penders goes through, and Packham does as well. Now, that will be encouraging for Packham and Penders, because they'll be thinking to themselves, if they were keeping an eye on the timing tower, 1.5 seconds was the difference between Davy Zoutenbayer and Jeffrey Van Buren. The podium fight is well and truly on, but Danny Zoutenbayer has found some performance after having a rough start to this race, it has to be said. He's found some performance in the middle phase of this race to put himself in a glorious position to take a first victory, and with the championship leader out of the race, he will take the lead of the season 11 championship. I mean, that would be phenomenal from him if he could pull it off, but there are still 20 minutes to go in this race, and Jeffrey Van Buren is responding. He's in the pit, so the race leader in pit lane, and it all comes down to whether Penders can get a good lap in here and maybe leapfrog Van Buren. If he doesn't, you have a feeling that Van Buren will be able to pull away as Packham tries to go up the inside. A little bit of hesitation from the Belgian, trying to find a way past Joe Warner. And look, he's just a little bit unsure of where Joe Warner's going all the time. He's just trying to find a way past the M4, and it's costing him heaps of time. Packham's got to go to the inside. He's not quite close enough. That would have been bold. And now Penders goes through, and Warner gets right out of the way. I think Joe was trying to move, to be fair to him, out of the way, but as one car out of the way, Penders has still got to clear Ross Harris in front of them. Ross Harris is lapping not too badly at the minute, so it won't be as easy to catch up to the back of that 244-992 Porsche. Ooh, a little slide at turn 1 for Penders. And I just want to make a point. Jeffrey Van Buren has re-emerged in the lead of the race in front of Danny Zoutenbayer, but here goes Packham to the outside in the Bentley. He's going to try and work it through. He's going to be on the inside for turn 4. And there's Davy Zoutenbayer as well, trying to gag in on the action. Now, it comes down to straight line speed, and Penders, well, you're going to see the Bentley in full force here. It's going to make it a bit of a foregone conclusion. Here comes the Bentley. It's going to be on the outside line, but I think he's going to make it before signs, to be honest. He squeezes on through, the Ferrari trying to get back at him, up to almost 180 miles an hour with the Nissan. Bouncing off the limiter at 177. A big twitch from Packham there. He nearly lost it going through signs at the right-hander. But this is now a fight that's finally posed. I think Penders will benefit from being behind Packham for a lap or two. The Ferrari does look like it's moving all over the road, but I think just to give himself a bit of a reset, as Penders has to keep his attentions firmly focused in front of him and behind him at the same time. But it will just help him follow a couple of lines, get a bit of rhythm back together, and maybe the Belgian can strike back at the Bentley. It won't be easy, it has to be said, but Packham now trying to get past Harris to lap him in 18th place. Van Buren is only just in front of Zoutenbayer, by the way, which makes me believe that the Ferrari man, the 187 race leader, hasn't taken on, I don't think, new tyres. I think the rest of the group here have. Unless fuel is a positive situation, but in truth I can't imagine that's going to have a factor really in such a short space of time. I might be wrong. And there you go. The battle for third place now clears the back marker of Ross Harris. So they get out of the way. Moving back forward. I said Zoutenbayer was close. 0.4 of a second. Van Buren is weaving and moving. He's trying to break the slipstream to his fellow Ferrari stablemate. But that Ferrari with the split livery is going to go to the outside line at signs. Can he try and make a move before? Can he get the move secure before they go into the right-hander, or will they be side by side? They will be side by side through the corners. Zoutenbayer's off the road, just trying to give racing room between the two. The 101 is going to go in all the way around the outside. At turn 9, he's still holding the car on the outside line. He runs over the curb a little bit. They're going to have to be careful going into turn 10, but it's going to be Zoutenbayer on the inside, and he moves into the lead of the race. The reigning champion has found his form. And now, can he cement this? What a drive so far. Really, really great battles all over the track. Speaking of great battles, Jordan Harding's been working his way back through the field up to 7th. This has been some recovery drive, but I know internally Jordan will be frustrated with what happened. He'll be knuckling down. He will be aiming for 6th. But I think if he doesn't pit again in the last quarter of this race, he will catch up to Phoenix Night Train. I don't think he's going to close what is currently over a 20-second gap. So, as John Wells has gone round at the exit of turn number 9. Liam Watkinson running in 15th place. Michael van der Waal, who had that spin earlier in the race, had big damage. He's in 17th currently. There's Nick Lamming going past Jacob Byford-Rue, who I did say would fall outside of the top 10, but credit to Byford-Rue. He's not far away from John Wells. That might not be over just yet. Let's just cut back to Nick Lamming there. You can see the M4 just showing his nose at the rear diffuser. And in fact, Byford-Rue has moved up to 11th place, so this is a spot for the top 10. Mark Gray's got inside the top 9. He's in 9th place. Had quite a quiet race as Mark, to be fair, in the Mustang, but I don't think he'll mind getting a top 10 result. Hartle Toby, after his steering wheel disconnected, he's in 13th position on his recovery drive, but I have a feeling a hefty penalty will be coming his way, even though it was accidental. Sadly, 2 cars were wiped out in that accident. And there's a drive-through penalty for Nick Lamming. So that is going to gift Byford-Rue a spot in the top 10. However, he does have Mark Chapman 4 seconds, less than 4 seconds behind. So I have a feeling he's going to have to be clinging on by his fingernails, Byford-Rue, to snatch this top 10 placing. The stop-and-go penalty for John Wells. Oh, it's gone from bad to worse for the ACC Race Nation director. Tony Manley's had a good race to 8th place so far. Phoenix Night Train's had a good race to 6th, but Harding is catching him at the minute. Zoutenbayer is leading. He's pulled a huge chunk of time out of Van Buren. And I think Van Buren is getting caught by Packham. Let's just have a look as we watch through the right-hander, then the left. There's Packham there in 3rd. Davy Zoutenbayer has found a way past Dennis Penders. So Penders currently in 5th place, but if Van Buren is struggling with the lack of tyres that he's not switched to, which I think is the case, then it's going to open a potential podium fight up for 2nd position. Zoutenbayer, in terms of Danny, looks like he's got a nice healthy margin, but I don't know if those tyres... And the reason why I think it is because if I just cut to the external shot, John Wells is harassing him, and John's just come into the pits for a new set of tyres, so I think that is the case, and Van Buren's just struggling to keep it on the circuit. So And Buren might be in a bit of trouble here. Let me just have a look at the lap time. So, I'm just going to see. There we go. We'll have to go from first to second to fifth to third. We'll work it out that way. So, Zoutenbayer leading the race at the moment. He's just done a 155.7. Van Buren's done a 57.8. Packham's just done a 55.5, and Davies done a 54.6. And Penders, he just has slipped a little bit away from everybody on a 56.4. So, out of the top 5, Van Buren, the slowest of the quintet. And can this day end with a debut podium for Davy Zoutenbayer? It'd be an incredible story. And I know that his wife would be delighted. Hello to Davy's wife, Mrs. Davy. But it would be a really brilliant result. He's been plucking away week in, week out since he joined the series midway through, well, I believe it was season 9, but he's been plucking away at this, and it would be a just reward, but he's got to get past either Packham or Van Buren in these remaining 11 minutes. This race has flown by. Absolutely phenomenal racing here tonight at Paul Ricard. Some people say they don't like the track, maybe from a driver's perspective in GT3 cars, perhaps for some people they don't enjoy it, but from a commentator's perspective and from a viewer's perspective, it is box office every time we come here for ACC Race Nation. There's always action, and this is the fight for for second place, because Van Buren's in their sights. Zoutenbayer in 4th place. Can he find a way through Packham? Because Packham looks like he's just navigating the turns as best as he can at the minute. Maybe he's struggling with the big Bentley's tyres. And Penders will be there to pick up any pieces. If need be, a 57.1 again from Van Buren. He's losing heaps of time. He's still slower than Penders, so... Ooh, how do you want to call this? I know that Harding is close with Phoenix Night Train for 6th position. I'm just following them on the track map, but not quite close enough for a move into turn 1 just yet. And I have to say, at the minute, and I was also going to say that Zoutenbayer was pulling away in the lead of the race was Danny, but it looks like that gap's closed. I don't know if he's had a little bit of an issue. Don't tell me that's another penalty for Jacob Byford-Rue. It is. And that is really going to harm his race. Speaking of getting harm in the race, this is going to harm his second place chances for Van Buren, because Packham goes through with the power of the Bentley. Oh, he's going to try and dive back up the inside. Packham saw it late, managed to avoid contact, and Zoutenbayer is going to try and round the outside. He's got to be brave here if he wants to make this move work. I think he's got the grip to do it. He's going to try all the way around the outside at turn 9, and he's done it. Zoutenbayer on for a podium. Now, can he go after Packham? Can he go through there? Gap to the leader at the moment looks to be less than 5 seconds. And Zoutenbayer's not going to try it at the final corner. He is going to try it at the final corner. And he's got the line, and he's going to have the exit. He did push, well, he didn't make contact, but he did have to push Packham out wide. Packham was aware of it, but who's got the straight line speed? I can't believe that the Nissan's going toe-to-toe with the big Bentley, but that is the case. If these two work together, though, they can catch Danny Zoutenbayer. They are quicker than him at the minute. Just got to work together, these two. And there could be a race on for the victory once again. I think that's Tony... No, it's Hartle Toby who's picked up a time penalty. And he's going to have to go back as a bit, so that recovery drive is not going to end inside the top 10, unfortunately. But we're not concentrating on that. We're concentrating on this beautiful fight for a podium spot. There's Danny Zoutenbayer just going for your shot there. These two, if these three... Oh, wow, what a recovery that was from Jeffrey Van Buren. I cannot believe he gathered that up on his lunch as well. It looked like the car was so sideways as he came out of the exit of turn 7. How he's collected that, I'm not sure. The car control was exemplary, but it's dropped him out of the slipstream between these two, and he might be under threat from Penders if he continues that slide in performance on a downhill trajectory. The front, these two are catching Zouten by. I don't know if it's enough though. Looking at the time left, 7 minutes to go. Ideally, is that Jeffrey Van Buren having a big wobble in the background? It was. Oh, that was always going to be an interesting move for Davey to try and pull off. I think Packham was opening the steering to get round that corner there, so not ideal. But Davey can see a 1-2 finish between siblings, and in fact, that you can see the Ferrari's being drawn in. A 56.4 from Zoutenbayer on that last lap. The Bentley 55.4, a second quicker. This is on. If they can just... I know it's easy for me to say, I'm watching it from a commentator's perspective, but if they can just put aside this fight for 2 or 3 laps, they can go gung-ho for this at the final lap and get past Zoutenbayer. Both these two cars are quicker in a straight line than the Ferrari. I mean, Stuart Packham coming from 22nd to win the race would be... It's got to be a record of an ACC Race Nation. Zoutenbayer trying the inside at turn 5. He feels like he's the faster driver. Perhaps he is at this moment, but he's just got to let Packham work that gap down, because he is comfortably quicker than the Ferrari in front of us. The gap down to 3 seconds. With less than 6 minutes to go. If you are watching, do not leave, because you are going to witness a grandstand finish here at Paul Ricard. You cannot call who is going to win this race. It is absolutely wide open as they blast into signs for the 27th time of asking. Both of them running the track limits as much as they possibly can at the right-hander. And corner by corner, that gap is coming down. Look at this, 2 seconds now, the gap between the race leader. And I don't know if it was also the case for Zoutenbayer, or as Davey has to go around the outside. It's a track limits violation, unfortunately, for Mark Chapman, so he's going to drop outside the top 10, so his recovery drive's gone wrong. But Zoutenbayer wants to go through. He doesn't... My microphone cut out at the worst possible time, but I've just had my head in my hands. Davey was so desperate to find a way through. He just needed to have a touch more patience. He'd have got past Packham. I've no doubt he would have done, but can he find time now to get up to the back of Packham again with 4 minutes to go? It's such a tall order. I hope he can, but he's going to take Jeffrey Van Buren with him, because that's brought the 296 Ferrari back into play. The only saving grace for Zoutenbayer is that the Ferrari isn't as fast in a straight line. Packham is 2.8 behind Danny Zoutenbayer, so that little bit of contact clearly upsetting the car. So that's going to be hard to pull down that gap. That is going to be some challenge to see whether he can pull that gap back. There's Jordan Harding. He did get past Phoenix Night Train. There's a big fight on for 7th place, actually. Tony Manley could get his best result I've seen in quite some time, actually. That would be a wonderful finish for him if he could get 7th place. But also, great drive for Phoenix tonight so far. Liam Watkinson, he's got a shot at a top 10 finish, you know. With Mark Chapman having that penalty, that drive-through, it's a tall order, I've got to say. The gap is against him, but if Liam Watkinson finishes inside the top 10, I think he'll run home with that. But the thing he's got to worry about is Howard Dunn closing the gap up to him at the minute. Nick Lamming's in 13th place after his trials and tribulations. I should be talking about Jacob Byford-Rue in the top 10, but his penalties have just put him in a position where he's now down in 15th place. But he should be encouraged by the speed he's shown tonight. He's deservedly been inside the top 10. Mark Gray still running around in 9th place. He's had quite an anonymous race, but it's been perfectly solid. Another top 10 result for him. His first since that podium back at round 3. It's a confidence boost. It's bringing it back for him. John Wells is there in 19th place. Joe Warner's 18th. Howard Dunn I've mentioned. There's Tony Manley. And Chapman is going to have to serve that drive-through in just a moment's time. Back at the front, Danny Zoutenbayer has stabilised the gap. 2.5 seconds between himself and Packham. So Zoutenbayer has found himself back in the groove and on his way to what is looking likely to be a first win of season 11. Jeffrey Van Buren has lost the back of the Nissan. That gap out to 2 seconds at the moment. Dennis Pender's still shadowing this quartet here in 5th position. Packham, though, I mean, this is an astonishing drive. 20 places gained. He's only 2 seconds behind the lead. It's coming down still. The gap is fluctuating so much. We'll find out on this lap whether we'll be on the final lap or not, as Mark Chapman serves that drive-through penalty. He's just going to get in front of Liam Watkinson, you know. That gap isn't much. But the big Bentley, maybe it's just one position too far to try and gain on the reigning champion. As we move on to what is looking likely to be the final lap of the race, which is confirmed. Packham 4 tenths quicker on that lap, but Davey Zoutenbayer was quicker than the pair of them. And Dennis Penders is going to be on for a really good 5th place. I had my fingers crossed for maybe a potential debut podium from him, but it wasn't to be. Packham has had an absolutely monstrous first sector. He's took half a second out of Zoutenbayer, and Zoutenbayer taking a very tight line into 5 and 6. In fact, got a little bit wrong there, so he's inviting some unnecessary pressure here. Is the season 10 champion. He doesn't want to be taking too much of a defensive line. We know that the Bentley is quicker than the Ferrari in the straights. 150 mile an hour. I'm going to keep an eye on this point here. 159. 163. That Bentley is absolutely shifting. The gap is less than a second on the final lap of the race. Is there time for more drama on lap 30? There's a yellow flag further up. It's not going to affect us at the minute. Trying to get ahead from the race director to get on to Davey, his brother, in terms of Danny Zoutenbayer. This is looking like it should be a race victory for the 101. He's just got to navigate these last 4 corners. Packham has done a fundamentally brilliant drive from the back of the pack, but it looks to be he's just going to come up short. Danny Zoutenbayer is going to round this final corner at turn number 13 to cap off the best race of the season so far. It's Danny Zoutenbayer who wins round 8 here at Paul Ricard. It's Stuart Packham in second. A debut podium for Davey Zoutenbayer in 3rd place, fully deserved. Jeffrey Van Buren in 4th. Dennis Penders, well done to him. He put in a great shift for 5th place. Led the race on merit. Great drive from him. Ross Harris crosses the line in 17th place. What a recovery drive this has been from Jordan Harding. Considering the way that the race worked out, it could have been a victory for him tonight, but sadly it wasn't. Phoenix Night Train ends up in 7th with Tony Manley in 8th position. Mark Gray is going to round the next few corners in 9th. He doesn't have to worry about Mark Chapman, but solid drive to 9th place for him in the Mustang, the only Mustang to finish inside the top 10, considering it's a Mustang circuit. That is a bit of a surprise, but that just shows you how things have gone badly wrong for a few of our drivers this evening. So Mark Gray is going to finish and come home in 9th position. Mark Chapman, I think, might be in the steward's office, to be honest, with a couple of bits of contact that he had during the course of the race, which was unfortunate. Then he had that drive through. He's still going to pick up points. He's still going to close the gap to... Well, he's going to overtake Tony Sokolov in the driver's standings, but your new championship leader will be Danny Zoutenbayer, thanks to that race victory. Great drive from this man, Nick Lamming, very close to a top 10 result in the end. He gets 11th place. Liam Watkinson deserves a lot of praise for that performance tonight in the number 4. The McLaren gets home in 12th. Hartle Toby is going to cross the line in 13th, but I feel he won't end up there. He's followed by a bunch of other drivers, including Michael van der Waal in 14th, Jacob Byford-Rue in 15th, should have been in the top 10. Then it's Howard Dunn in 16th, Ross Harris in 17th place, John Wells in 18th, Joe Warner finishing in 19th. We had some retirements from the race. They were in the form of Dan Hatton, Tony Sokolov after that massive impact when he was leading the race, and Rich Jarram, who has had what can only be described as a very sweary end to his racing here tonight in the 878 Ferrari Lamborghini. But wow, that was, I'm sure you will all agree, wonderful to watch. It was exciting, it was dramatic. The first half an hour of that race, we couldn't tell you who was going to win. In the last half an hour, we still couldn't tell you who was going to win. It went down to the wire on the final lap, but well done to Danny Zoutenbayer. It's going to be a sibling podium, not in the way that people would have expected it to be, in the form of first and third for the two brothers, but Davy Zoutenbayer might be looking back at this race and watching it thinking, if I hadn't have made that lunge, maybe he could have got past his brother. And in fact, the race winner is saying here in the chat that his tyres were completely gone. So he's done a good job to hold on in the end to that race victory. He saw that Jeffrey Van Buren was struggling with the tyres, the Ferrari maybe chewing them up a little bit more. That's maybe why we saw Dennis Penders having that slower middle phase of the race. But from the racing tonight, we'll be moving on to the next event, which will be at Suzuka for round number 9 of the championship here with ACC Race Nation. I will be commentating on round number 10, which will be at Brands Hatch on the 26th of November. I'd love to be able to commentate on all the races this season, but alas, personal commitments outside of sim racing have pulled me away this season from doing all of the action I'd love to cover. But hopefully at Brands Hatch we're going to have an even more brilliant race around there. There are still 7 races remaining in this season, and also to make a point that the championship actually finishes in 2026 for round 15, so we've still got the rest of the year to go, more action there, and then there is going to be naturally the rest of the championship. Before then, before we even get to the new year, we've still got a bunch of races before that, so that's going to be exciting. But from me, Jack Millington, your commentator on the Season 11 Championship for the GT3 Series here of ACC Race Nation. It has been a fantastic time, and wherever you might be in the big wide world, have a good one. We'll see you for the next race.